All right. Hello, 14ers, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is July 3rd, 2021. As I speak to you now, we are, I guess, about approximately 14 days away from the escape of the bride of Christ. That is what I believe. That is what has been revealed. This is a culmination of everything coming together in this ministry. And what I'm going to share with you today is if it doesn't add fuel to your excitement, just go to sleep. I don't know what to tell you. You're about to see today what I touched in passing either last video, maybe a couple videos ago. I saw some comments come up about it, and I thought, oh my goodness, you know what? I really need to lay this out for everybody, because brothers and sisters, what you're going to see is what the word has been telling us in the Gospels related to the Feast of Trumpets the entire time. You're going to see it was never a mystery, but the understanding of when it applied and to who it applied was the greatest part of the mystery. All right? We're going to delve into Luke, Mark, Matthew, Mark, Luke in reverse. And I'm going to show you this understanding that you're going to say, oh my goodness, the only way this could all be true is if the tribulation begins, the 14 years begins at the Feast of Trumpets 2021. You're going to see every event of the Lord's coming right to the end is the Feast of Trumpets. Now, I touched on something a little bit a couple videos ago in Matthew 24. Some of you guys will understand parts of it, maybe in having already understood much of the revelation here in Ministry Revealed. We've talked about the very end of the 14 years, which is the entire wedding ceremony, right? 13, and then boom, there's a marriage, and then she's gone for a year, and then she's brought back with the trumpet blast, right? We talked about that with a pastor's video, but he thinks it's the rapture. You see, when you see it from Matthew and you realize what it's saying, you're going to see how why that pastor, J Carl, I think it is, and why everybody sees that it thinks that what they see in Matthew means the Pre Trib rapture. But even better, you're going to understand why the post-tribbers say, no. You pre-tribbers, in Matthew 24, that is not the rapture. It's at the end that the Lord's coming. They're right. They're right. And that's no mystery to us. We know Matthew speaks to the Jews. It's to Judah. It's at the end of tribulation. Trumpets is Jacob's trouble time. Trumpets is the 7 years for Judah, for the Jews. 6 years, and the 7th is the Sabbath year. The Lord will return at the end of 6 years. And I'm going to show you this in Scripture, but it's going to be even better than that, because we're not just hanging out in Matthew. We're going to show you what it means in Mark. But all of it is connected, and all of it had to be revealed from the understanding that the Lord led us to for this past almost 15 months or so, which was to come to the understanding of the beginning. Aleph, Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets. The Lord was leading us here the entire time. And it's going to be exciting. You're going to see this connection. You're going to see 717 again. One for the Gentiles, one. Oh, you'll get to it. You'll see it soon. It's so exciting, guys. So let's get started. Let me get into what I always share first, or what I try to always share at the beginning, which is this right here. This playlist right here called The Revealed End Times Study Note Series. For anybody that's new to Ministry Revealed, what you're about to hear in this teaching is going to probably blow your mind, but it's going to first of all make you say, what's he talking about? 14 years? Okay, well, if Matthew is to the Jews, well, then who's Mark to? Well, Mark's to the sleeping church, brothers and sisters. And then who's Luke to? Luke is to the bride of Christ. Those like Enoch who are ready, watching, praying, seeking the Lord, diligently seeking the Lord, and believing he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. All right. This first 30-minute intro video, to which you can get these study notes in the description box right here. Same with any video in this series that has study notes, you can find them in the description box. This first intro video is about who the Gospels are speaking to. It finally reveals the mystery that people have been seeking for hundreds of years, which is, why three Gospels? Why do they speak slightly different? We've always been told that it's just a slight variation in a point of view. Like if there's an auditorium and it was 300 people and it was 100, 100, 100, they might see that better from that angle. They might understand better from that angle. They might understand better from that angle. That's not true. The truth is, there's a difference to who the Gospels are speaking to. And the revelation is, when you see who they're speaking to, once you understand it, you will understand the entire conversation going on is to each specific group of people. And we reveal this here within the end of days understanding. But it also reveals things that were and removes confusion from a lot of things that were already in the past. I promise you, this is 30 minutes that will change your scripture life forever. With all my heart, I promise you, watch this 30-minute video. And if you don't think it's true and you don't want to pray about it, and you don't care, then move on and we'll see you one day soon. All right? I promise you all it's worth your time. The second one, which is revealed after you understand that the three synoptic gospels are speaking to different groups of people, then you come to this second one, which is the 14 years. You will realize that Luke speaking to the Pre Trib Bride of Christ, Mark is speaking to the sleeping church that was left behind to endure seals because they needed to wake up and commit to him, not just mamsy-pamsy believing, but really be committed to the Lord, which they will, because it's the final 7 years for the church. Okay? And so this will be the greatest revival in all of human history. That'll be Mark's group. There'll be over 1 billion people during the tribulation of seals within the 6-year period come to Christ. And that is the Mark portion. That's the first of the 7 years of tribulation. That's the seals. And the second 7 years, which is trumpets, is to Matthew's group. The temple will be rebuilt. It'll be 3.5 years. Then Satan will step in. And in the seals portion, it's the Antichrist with the mark of the beast. You see, it's in the flesh body that the mark will be a part of, because the temple of God will still dwell within men during seals, because it's still a portion of the church. But in Matthew, the temple will be rebuilt and Satan will come and stand in the midst of it once he's been kicked out. So you got Antichrist, false prophet for seals, and you've got Satan and the false prophet in trumpets, which there's more to the Antichrist as well, but we'll leave it at that. Okay, this will really, really wake you up, and you will understand the truth. You will understand how it's laid out. You will understand that Christ died and resurrected in 33 AD. And when he returns, it'll be at the end of 2,000 years. So not at the beginning of 33 AD, but at the end, which will be sometime in 2034. All right? Because a year doesn't go from January to January. The Lord revealed to us that he is running everything from fall to fall, or from the fall feast, we can say, from trumpets to trumpets. And that is today's theme. That's going to blow your mind when you understand it all. And from there, come and check out some of these other videos. This one here will reveal to you why having been taught from Matthew all our lives has messed us all up, has caused us to miss half of the understanding of the end of days and the portion of Luke's. It's really, really vital. You'll also understand in this sixth video that pre, mid, and post-tribulation, they're all true. It is the pre-trib bride of Christ, Luke, It is the mid-trib rapture of the church, Mark. And it is the return of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives for Christ, post, which is Matthew. Okay? So when I told you a few minutes ago that the post-tribbers saying, no, we believe it's post-trib because of what Matthew says in Matthew 24 about nobody knows the day or hour, they're right. It's so amazing, guys. So let's get going into it. I'm so excited to share it. I was going to do the video yesterday, but then some running around. And I'll tell you what, I'm sure many of you are feeling it. This isn't, we weren't led to 717 because people's dreams or visions and things over the years. We were led by the Lord to the ox, to the bull's eye, to Taurus, and that the Taurus field is everything. That Taurus is Aleph. That Aleph is Christ in the beginning. He is the beginning and the end. That is what all of this got us and brought us to this point. And only in 2021 does 717 on the Gregorian calendar, which is important for the first 717, because today is going to be talking about, in particular, the second one. Okay, so we've got a Gregorian 717, which many people have had visions and audibles about over the years, is where the Lord led us in this. And knowing that the revelation that we had from Zechariah, that they wouldn't observe the 5th and 7th month fasting and mourning after doing it for 70 years, well, the 9th of Av is the 18th of July, the time of the first attack after the escape of the bride. You see, it's all connected. And the feeling within, I'm not speaking, I'll speak for myself, but I know I'm not just speaking about myself, because I know there are so many of you out there right now that maybe weren't certain about previous times and seasons that had passed, and but it was close and things were building. But those who were hesitant last time, I know from hearing from some of you that hesitation is melting away this time, because the revelations have proven it. And this video today is going to make you so much more excited when you understand that the 14 years of tribulation, the entire thing starts at Feast of Trumpets. It's Feast of Trumpets at the Lord at the end of the seals portion. It is Feast of Trumpets again at the end of the Lord's return, at the end of trumpets. It is the Feast of Trumpets again at the end of the 14th year of trumpets. Brothers and sisters, you're going to see the revelation of the understanding as to the day and hour no one knows revealed here today in Matthew and Mark. And of course, we know why Luke's isn't, but I'm going to reveal and bring that tighter in for you today. Okay, so let's start with this right here. Aleph, the ox, right? This is what the Lord has been bringing us to for over a year now. Okay, the ox, the head of the year, the start, the beginning. If we go to Genesis chapter 1, in verse 1, we know the beginning. Who is this beginning? Christ is. This is the first fruits of the first fruits of the feast harvest, right? Of the first fruits, feast of first fruits. This is Christ. Okay, and he's called the beginning. But do you know when we go to the book of Revelation, we get greater detail, right? In Revelation 21 verse 6, he says, "And he said unto me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." Okay, what is he? He's the Alpha. He's what? The first and the last. Okay, the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, which means chiefest, commencement, beginning, or first. You see, over and over and over, he is the beginning, the first, the head. All right, he is the head. You following? Alpha is the head of the ox. This is what he's telling us, and this is where he's leading us to. Okay, so when we go to understand the Feast of Trumpets, what is Feast of Trumpets called? Well, to the Jews, it's called Rosh Hashanah, okay, which is translated as what? First or head of the year. Well, what did I just show you first was? The head, the ox. You see, the ox head, the head of the year. Because this time it's all about the ox. Okay, that was part of the last video. So anybody who hasn't watched the last video yet, maybe it wasn't enough attention getting by saying 2 New Years, but I promise you, you're going to want to watch it. You're going to understand why the confusion of going through some of the kings and going into the books of the Kings and the Chronicles, and this end time understanding where we all, we've all heard it said, well, he's fulfilled the spring feast, but now he's got to fulfill the fall feasts. But we were looking at counting it from a spring feast perspective. But it's not going to be a spring feast perspective this time, because he fulfilled it. And why did he begin by fulfilling the spring feasts? Why didn't it start at the head of the year? Why didn't it actually begin in the beginning? Because you guys will remember when I told you in this video, when I came out of the shower, I told my wife, send me a text so that I can remember to go look at this. And the purpose for my question to myself was, I remember something about before either the flood or around that time. It used to be in the beginning that Tishri was the head of the year, was the beginning of the year. And that it changed and it became Nisan. Well, isn't that exactly what this is telling us? In the beginning, Christ, Aleph, ox, and what does Rosh Hashanah mean? The first, the head of the year, or the beginning. So, in the beginning, Tishri was also the head of the year. Okay, but it changed, and I don't know about the evidence to where else to show it like that, but we did find in the last video was the revelation that the house of Israel counts the new year from Nisan, whereas the house of Judah and its kings counted the head of year from Tishri. And when Christ came the first time, he came but for the house of Israel. We showed you that in Matthew. He came but for the house of Israel. And of course, we know the Gentiles got grafted in. Which means what? That's why he came and he fulfilled the spring feast first, because he came for the house of Israel. But there's still another job to do, because the house of Judah hasn't been saved. They were blinded, remember? We spoke about that in the last video, so I'm not going to go all the way down that trail. So that was an even better revelation than showing what I was just talking about, to say in the beginning. Aleph, in the beginning, start means trumpets. So in the beginning, it was the Feast of Trumpets, but there was a change that happened and it became Nisan. Right? So now, in the end, it's going back to the beginning. Do you see? We've said that so many times here in this ministry. The end is the beginning of the end. In the end is going back to the beginning. Okay? And that's why the Lord has led us to the Feast of Trumpets. But we know that the Gentile bride of Christ, there's nothing that says the day and hour no one knows. But in Mark, it has the day and hour no one knows. In Matthew, it has the day and hour no one knows. But for some reason, majority of the church, like 90% plus, believe that it means the pre-trib and the rapture. It has nothing to do with it. It's all about Christ. So you see, you're about to see that Christ is coming at the day and hour no one knows. Not the rapture, okay? But his coming. That's what's about to happen. It's all about when he comes. Let me show you this. Do you guys, I'm sure every single one of you have heard about this, or at least the vast, vast majority have all heard about this before. The day and hour no one knows does not mean you can't know the day. What it means is it's a specific reference to the Feast of Trumpets. See, but of that day and hour, no, not the angels, is saying he will return at the Feast of Trumpets. It's all about the Feast of Trumpets. The day and hour no one knows does not mean no one will know. It means the Feast of Trumpets. We all know, or at least the vast majority, have heard that the day and hour no one knows means the Feast of Trumpets. Why? Because it's the only feast that needs to spot the crescent of the moon. So you don't know if you're going to see it on the first night or if they're going to see it on the second night. So if they don't see it on the first night, it's automatically the second night. Hence the reason for the day and hour no one knows. Not the month, not the week, not the month, not the year, but a day that's a 1 to 2 day period that no one will know, because they don't know if it'll be on the first or on the second. Only the Father does. And this is what Jay McCarl was talking about. Okay? But we've talked about this. I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but he tells this story, of course, from a Matthew perspective, thinking it's pre-trib. It drives me crazy. And it's not because I'm angry with him. I love it because we can reveal its understanding. Okay? But what happens is he tells the story that girls can be married at 13. So they enter into a covenant when the girl is born, and I have, it's my best friend and it's her daughter, and they're just born, and I have a son, and we enter into an agreement, but they can't get married till she's 13. So it's the exact same thing as the 13 years of seals and trumpets to the end of the 6th trumpet. And at the end is when the Lord returns feet down on the Mount of Olives. And when he does, that's the legal time of the 13 years that she can now be married. But then what happens? Then he goes away and he prepares a place for 1 year. So they've been married, but then there's the great big ceremony, and all adorned as a bride. She's preparing for it for the entire final year with her bridesmaids, with their candles lit. And then the Father comes at the end of that year, okay? And the Son, nobody knows whether it's the first day, the second day, but it's only a couple days. And the Father comes and tells the Son, okay, it's time to go. And then he blasts the trumpet, which means that when the 14 years are over and this 1 year of preparation has taken place, that it's the Feast of Trumpets. Now, we shared this portion before, okay? We shared that means it's the Feast of Trumpets. Well, do you know what it means if at the end of 13 years and it's 1 year later? It was the Feast of Trumpets. Well, it gets better, because I'm going to show you exactly the meaning of this Feast of Trumpets, and I'm going to show you then marks as well. It's fantastic. All right. Let's listen to a couple minutes of this. Let me turn up the volume, just so you can hear him say it himself. You're going to hear him say that it's a couple day period.
Got the robes ready. The bridegroom, he's sleeping with the guys in the room. They're all packed into one little room. The girls with all packed into one little room. She's got her wedding dress on. They got their white robes on. She doesn't have her veil on. They're going to put that on before she steps outside, and they have one lamp burning. And this goes on for maybe a day or two. It doesn't last too long. They just don't know when it's going to happen.
There, did you hear that? What he talks about, he believes is the pre-trib rapture of the bride of Christ. Right? We've shared this before, but what he's really talking about at this point that I'm sharing with you, he's really talking about the end of Matthew. After the 1 year And he's literally talking about the day and hour when the Father then comes and wakes him up. That's what he was going to go talk about next. The Father comes and wakes him up, and then they get all excited and they all go run and they all start, he blasts the shofar and everybody hears it and everybody goes running and starts getting prepared. He's literally talking about the end of the 14th year. Not the bride, the Gentile bride of Christ, but the Rachel type of bride of Christ. Not the Leah, all right? But the final wedding, if you will, for Rachel. That's the typology. Now, it's so exciting, man. Here we go. Watch this. Okay. So we've shared this here in the past. Okay. 717. The Hebrew word 717. Let's go to Hebrew 717. It only shows up twice in Scripture. Okay. We've shared this 717 before. And it's awesome because one means to gather and the other means to pluck. Well, the gathering is the one that relates to the escape of the Gentile bride of Christ. The pluck is to the rapture of the church. And if you guys will remember, the word rapture in Revelation chapter 12, or any place you see the word for harpazo or for caught up, is the word pluck. And it even goes not only in the end of the book of Genesis in Revelation, but it's also in the beginning in Genesis chapter 8. What happens? There's the 40 days and nights, references the Son of Man. The dove goes out and then leaves. That's the 50 days when the tribulation will begin the following day. That will be right around the time of trumpets this year. The dove leaves then for 7 days as a type and shadow of 7 years. Okay. That's why we get this word, which means to twist and whirl in pain, as in a woman in travail, because this is going to be the beginning of the travailing. And then you have, when the 7 days, 7 years, the type and shadow, what do you have? The olive leaf plucked off. It's the rapture. You see, what most forget is that the escape is mostly filled, if you will, with Gentiles, with the Gentile bride. Okay, when we go to the rapture, which we've broken down here many times in Second Esdras, see, the Most High will deliver those who are upon the earth. Well, who's that? This is the escape of the Gentile bride. Then bewilderment of mind, war, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. This is the beginning of tribulation. Then all those things that will have happened that I told you before, that's the seals taking place. Then the Son of Man will be revealed on Mount Zion, coming to be manifest as a place prepared and built. Okay, this is what John chapter 14 says. This is now the time of the rapture that's at hand. And who's going? Who's going in this time at the rapture? Didn't we say the first related to the house of Israel? The house of Israel are the 10 tribes that got scattered throughout the earth that mingled with Gentiles. So yes, Gentiles will be mixed with them, but it is considered the house of Israel if their Gentiles are mixed in with them. So if it's the end of the church age, which is the house of Israel's time, the end of that age is the end of the church age, which is the end of seals. This is why you have the escape right here, delivering of a group that was there, freaking out on earth taking place, then nation against nation, and all the tribulation, bring the seals beginning. Then the Lord, the Son of Man, coming on Mount Zion prepared and built, because this is paradise. This is where the rapture group of the great multitude is going. And who are they? Verse 39 and 40. This is chapter 13 of 2nd Esdras. And as for you, seeing him gather to himself another multitude that was peaceable, these are the 10 tribes, which were led away from their own land into the captivity of the days of the king Hosea. Shulem answered the king of the Assyrians. Remember, it's Syria that's going to strike the first attack, or we call the second attack, right around the time of trumpets of 2021. Okay, but who's the rapture group related to? The lost tribes, the 10 tribes that Christ came for, the house of Israel, to which the Gentiles are grafted into. You see? That is the plucked. That is the rapture group. So here's the awesome thing that you're about to find out. The word is 717 in the Hebrew. It's only used twice, and we've understood the first one as the escape of the bride, which is the Song of Solomon, all about the beautiful bride, whereas this one is to pluck and to gather to himself, which is what? The rapture, which is the same as harpazo and rapture, to pluck or plucked out of the way. Is it possible then, you're going to love this when I show you guys, that 717, which it turns out equals the Gentile bride on the Gentile date calendar? See, we've shared this before, right? Okay, we shared this here, that it's in his name. The revelation of 717 was everywhere, and it's being confirmed all around us, even more so now. We shared this, okay? We shared in this video that what I'm talking about here, it equals 717, and it's for the escape of the bride of the Gentiles. And what does it equal on the Hebrew, on the Gentile calendar? 7 July 17. So for the Gentile bride, for the Gentile gathering of the Gentile bride on the Gentile calendar is 717. Okay, this is all that portion for Luke. But you'll notice, as we said, that in Luke, it has nothing in, there's nothing in Luke's discourse or discord, right? The discord about, sorry, not discord, discourse. There's nothing about the day and hour no one knows, because it's all about the Feast of Trumpets. But Christ isn't coming this year at the Feast of Trumpets. The 40 days of the Son of Man are before the Feast of Trumpets. Do you know what else the Feast of Trumpets actually means, brothers and sisters? Check this out. The Feast of Trumpets means, watch this, you shall have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets. Okay, here it is. It can also mean a battle cry. It could also mean a time of the jubilee. I'll show you that in a moment too. See, for alarm, blow an alarm, destroy, sound an alarm, but it could also be triumph because of jubilee. But it's also about an alarm for war, an alarm for destruction. Sound the alarm. Okay, but you also saw that it could be for including jubilee. That's right. Of course it could be jubilee, because if the end of the 13 years is the Feast of Trumpets, and when the Lord returns, or when the bride is brought to him, right, all adorned and everything, while everything was being prepared, while he was here preparing everything for that final year, and then it's the shofar blast at the day and hour no one knows at the Feast of Trumpets. Well, what do you think Jubilee is going to start at? The Feast of Trumpets. I told you, it's all going to equal Feast of Trumpets for the Lord. Meaning it all had to come to the revelation of bringing us to the understanding of the Feast of Trumpets. It's so incredible. It's so awesome. But watch this. Okay? In Revelation chapter 7, we spoke about this in the video of 717. It's in his name. All right? Now, remember this. And I always say, guys, be careful. I am not saying every chapter to year is in the book of Revelation like we do with these books here. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. But in the book of Revelation, we have 22 chapters, right? The book of Revelation has 22 chapters. And the main events in the 22 years is like the end of the 7th year. Right towards the end of the 7th year is the escape of the bride of Christ before the 8th starts. Then the rapture of the church, the 144,000 sealed, and the rapture we know is in the 14th year. Okay. Then we know in chapter 20, or in the 20th year, which is like this portion here, you see, we're coming to the end of the 7. This portion is the 14 years of seals and trumpets. Okay, but this is the big picture. When you get to 20, this is when the Lord returns. And of course, we know when we go to the book of Revelation, what do we see in chapter 7? We see a group being sealed, and we see a group before the Lord. Okay, now in the type and shadow, in looking at the major events in the years, we can see a type and shadow of the escape of the bride of Christ, a group being chosen to work, and the escape of the bride of Christ in chapter 7. In chapter 7, just like we showed how 7:17, one was gather, and the book of Revelation chapter 7 ends with 7:17. So we've got one covered as the pre-trib escape in the type and shadow of chapters to years over the 22 from the book of Revelation, the escape of the bride of Christ, right where it should be. And it's a 7:17 chapter and verse. Well, what if we look at it the way it naturally is now? We know that chapter 6 is all about the seals. All of these seals is 6 years. It is the revelation of 6 years of seals. Okay, so we're no longer talking about looking at it as chapters to years events. We're looking at it for what it actually is, the 6 seals, and they will be over a period of 6 years. It doesn't mean 1 year, 1 year the next, 1 year the next. It's just over a series of 6 years. And when it's over, when the 6 years are over, who do you see? Well, look at what we see at the end. When the 6 years of seals have come to an end, look at what it says. And they said unto the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So when is this? After the 6 years of seals have ended, this is the image of the Lord coming on heavenly Mount Zion that you just saw in 2nd Esdras. Okay, so what is it? It's right here. It's this line between 6 and 7. The 6 years of seals are over. The 6 seals are done. And there's the Lord coming. Now, let's take this and bring it into Luke's gospel. And into Mark's gospel. And we're going to go into his discourse. There we have nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Isn't that what 2nd Ezra said? There's going to be a group being taken, which is the Luke group, and then it's going to be nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Okay, here's all the seals. This is the portion of seals. Here's the abomination of desolation, which is different than Matthew's. This is the Antichrist and the mark of the beast time. You'll notice there's no false prophets or false Christs until the time of the mark of the beast. And then what do you see? False Christs and false prophets are showing up. Okay, it's the type and shadow. It's the Antichrist and false prophet. So here's all the tribulation of seals. Then look what it says. Mark 13, starting in verse 24. But in those days, after that tribulation, after that tribulation, see, that portion of seals, that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall. This is the 6th seal it's talking about. And the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. You see, in. He's not on the clouds. He's in the clouds. They're not fully going to understand what they're seeing, but there's going to be some understanding, all right? And then shall he send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of heaven to the uttermost part of the earth. There's something you're not seeing here. There's no word trumpet. This has nothing to do with his coming at this point here. When he sends out to gather his elect, you notice it's not saying that he's going to do it at the sound of the trumpet. Okay, he's sending them out, but then look at this. You'll start to really grasp this here. When we get to Mark 13:32, it starts to go into, but of that day and of that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father only. What is this the end of? This is the end of the tribulation of seals. It's the end of the 6 years. It's the end. The 6th seal has come to an end, and they see heavenly Mount Zion coming down, and they are panicking, just like it says at the end of the 6th seal. This day and hour no one knows is about the Son coming. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for you know not when that time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, that left his house, who gave it to authority of his servants, and so forth. It's about his coming. When? At the day and hour no one knows. So, if the tribulation of the 14 years begins at the Feast of Trumpets 2021, and the Lord will return at the day and hour no one knows after 6 years, then when is he coming? 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So when is this telling us? It's telling us at the Feast of Trumpets 2027, either the 2nd or the 3rd, a day and hour in which no one knows, not even the Son, he's going to return. This is exactly what? After 6 years. Can we prove this out some more? Of course we can. This is what we've been doing for over 3.5 years. Do you remember this? So then I know what you guys are thinking. Some of you are thinking, well, then what about the rapture? Okay, what about the rapture? Well, for those that have been watching for a little while, you'll remember these. You see, I talk about this in the pre, mid, and post video. All right, that pre, mid, and post, they're all true. When you go into the story of the transfiguration and you go into Luke's, for example, Luke's is all about the pre-trib. Okay, what do we see in Luke 9 verse 27 and 28? But I tell you of a truth, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death. Okay, boom, you're going to be taken till they see the kingdom of God. Meaning the next thing you're going to see is the kingdom of God. And then what? And it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings, about 8 days after these sayings, what happens? The Son of Man is here. The Son of Man, this is the beginning of the Lord's 40 days as the Son of Man before the 14 years begins. This is why in Luke's discourse, it does not say the day and hour no one knows, because when he comes for 40 days of the Son of Man, he's doing it before the Feast of Trumpets. This is why the meaning of about 8 days is a dual meaning, because the bride has already escaped And when he says he's coming at about an 8 days later, this is saying, it means he's coming back after the Gentile wedding has taken place. The 50 days will have begun when the escape of the bride happens. When this happens on 7/17, the day after is the beginning of the 50-day count. At that time is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and he's going to return at about an 8 days, but he's going to do it as the Son of Man. He's going to be rejected. The vast majority of people aren't going to believe him. I'm sure there will be thousands who will, but they will be chosen apostles and some disciples. But for the most part, the vast majority will not believe who he is. But this is that reference as the 8 days coming back from the wedding. But when I said it's a dual meaning, is because it's also a type and shadow of days, meaning years. So in the big picture of the end of days, it's about an 8 days, meaning it's almost the time of the 8th year to start. Okay, when his 40 days are over, it's only going to be 2, 3, 4 days or so left before the 8th day, which is the first day or the first year of the tribulation of seals starting, or the entire tribulation starting. So it's a type and shadow of days because of the wedding, but it's also a type and shadow of the years because it will be the beginning of the tribulation. Okay, not quite. That's why it says about. This is all about the escape of the bride and the Lord's return for 40 days before the tribulation begins. This is why in Luke 21, like I said, there's no day or hour. You see, this is where it says, the same place where Mark and Matthew say the day and hour no one knows. Luke says, don't be caught unawares, right? The whole world is going to be caught unawares. It's going to be a snare upon the whole earth. Well, now you can understand why in Second Esdras, it said after God took out a people, the world was in bewilderment, and then they plan and they start making war against each other. So watch and pray that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. You don't get that in Mark or in Matthew. So when we go now back to Mark and we see Mark's portion, and it's that day and hour no man knows, not even the Son. And we know that it's the idiom. We know it's the meaning for the Feast of Trumpets. And we know that 6 years later, he's saying he's going to be coming at the Feast of Trumpets. That is the time at the Feast of Trumpets 2027 that they will be screaming, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Because you know why? Do you remember what I said the Feast of Trumpets means? Let's go have another look. I showed it to you a little early to give you a little heads up so you will see it when it comes. What does the blowing of the trumpets also mean? A battle cry. It is a battle cry. A sound of alarm for war or for destruction. Why? Because when the Lord comes, what's he going to do? He's going to destroy all those who came against his people. Remember, they're going to gather themselves against him. Even Second Esdras says that. There he is on Mount Zion, a place prepared and built. But then what happens? Look at, every man shall leave his own land and warfare against one another, and an innumerable multitude shall gather together as you saw, desiring to come to conquer them. And then we know he's going to destroy them. But guess what? When is the group coming to him of the great multitude? After he's destroyed them. After he's destroyed them. So what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing two things. We understand now that Rosh Hashanah can also mean the sounding of the trumpet for an alarm of devastation and destruction coming. And at the coming of the Lord, what's he going to do? He's going to destroy all those who came against his people. Do you guys remember this? Many of you guys will. Do you remember in Luke chapter 22? I've always loved this. I find it hilarious the way it's told to us. It's so funny. Right here. In Luke 22, we'll start in verse 36. And they said unto him, but now, and he said unto them, but now he that hath a purse. So the one whoever has money, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. So he's talking to a group of people, and he's telling them to sell what you can. If you don't have money, go buy a sword. All right, sell what you got, because you need to get a sword. For I say unto you that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me, that he was reckoned among the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end. And listen to what they say. This is hilarious. And they said, Lord, behold, here are 2 swords. He's talking to a whole group of people. And they're like, yeah, maybe we can go get some later, but let's see if he'll accept 2 swords. And then he's like, all right, that's enough. It's such a hilarious story because there's a whole group of them. And they turn around and say, we got 2. And then Jesus, okay, that's fine, that's enough. Do you know why? Because those 2 swords relate to his 2 comings when? At the Feast of Trumpets. You got it, brothers and sisters. There we go. This is his coming after 6 years, feet down, on heavenly Mount Zion, to battle with that first sword at the ram's call for destruction that's coming. This is why in Mark, if you go to Mark's version of the transfiguration, look at what we read. Actually, let's start right here in verse 2. We'll go back to verse 1 in a minute. And after 6 days. Remember, I said for those that haven't, if you watch that video about pre, mid, and post, you'll understand what I'm talking about. What is after 6 days? Well, it's a type and shadow. Like Luke's meant about an 8 days because of when he returns from the wedding. But it also means the about 8th year because the tribulation is going to be starting, right? This 8 equaling the first year of tribulation. Well, what do you think after 6 days being a type and shadow of years is going to mean? It's the exact same thing we see in Revelation chapter 6. At the end of 6 years, who shows up? The Lord. And he's coming with the sword to destroy those who came against Israel, his people. It's the exact same meaning. It's the exact timing. It didn't say we couldn't know the week. It didn't say we couldn't know the month. It didn't say we couldn't know the year. It said we couldn't know the day because it's a 1 to 2 day period. But it is not the rapture. You see, I know some people are thinking, oh, but wait a second. Where's the rapture? If the day and hour no one knows in Mark's discourse is talking about the Lord's return on heavenly Mount Zion after 6 years of seals, which we see him coming at the end of the 6th trumpet, which is exactly the timing for trumpets of 2027. When is the rapture? That's why this is so amazing. This is why it can never be understood by people that always go to Matthew. Because Matthew is not at all for the house of Israel or for the church. It's to Judah. So listen to what this says in Mark 9 verse 1. And he said unto them, verily I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here which shall not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom come with power, the kingdom of God come with power. Hello. What did it say? have seen. It's past tense, meaning they will have seen it come at the time of trumpets, 2027. At the end of 6 years of seals, after 6 days or 6 years, they saw it coming. It's a past tense saying they saw it. But guess what? They don't know when they're going. Because the day and hour no one knows was about the Son of Man coming on heavenly Mount Zion after 6 years. It had nothing to do with the rapture, even in Mark. So this brings us back, if you'll remember, it's so awesome, man. It is so awesome. If you'll remember what we spoke about at the beginning, what was 717? The escape of the pre-trib bride of Christ for the Gentiles on the Gentile calendar, 717. But now we're looking for the pluck or the rapture of who? Israel, the 10 tribes. Yes, the church, that's the church too. They're grafted in, right? So we're looking for that rapture group that we shared is right here. Those 10 tribes of which the Gentiles are grafted into. That's who we're looking for. And so where do we find it? Well, it's of course, if the 6 years of seals are here in Revelation chapter 6, and this is the Lord coming on heavenly Mount Zion after 6 days or the after 6 years, and they will have seen him come, meaning they saw this happen, but they still weren't taken. When do they get to go? Well, let's have a look. That takes us into Revelation chapter 7, and it says what? And after these things. Well, after what things? The things over in chapter 6. After the 6 years of tribulation, and having seen the Son of Man come on heavenly Mount Zion. What's going to happen? The 144,000 are going to be sealed. And then you've got the rapture of the great multitude. Where are we again? We're in the understanding now, not in reading it like I said earlier, right? Not in reading it with the type and shadow of the chapters to years as the pre-trib Gentile bride, Gentile calendar 717. But now we're looking at it for what the actual teaching in the book of Revelation is, that the 6 years of seals are chapter 6, and that chapter 7 is the 144,000 sealed, and the rapture of the great multitude. And it's in what? Chapter 7, verse 17. And what are we looking for? The plucked portion for the rapture. So if there are 2 of them, and one of them was 717 on a Gentile Gregorian calendar, what would 717 equal on Israel's calendar? On the end of days calendar for the Lord. Are you ready for this? If the Lord is coming and does and will be seen, have seen on October, a Feast of Trumpets in October of 2027, and the beginning of the year is Tishri at the Feast of Trumpets, what is 7 months later? If the beginning of the year was Nisan, and in the end of days, the beginning of the year is Tishri, then 7 is 1, just like 6 is 12, 9 is 3, so on and so forth. This time, the Lord, as we taught, is going from Tishri, which means the 7th month would be equivalent to the 1st month. So when would 7:17 be in the end of days calendar? Well, let's go forward. There's month 1, Tishri. Shavan is 2. Kislev 3. Let's go to 2028. Tevet 4. Shavat 5. Adar 6. Nisan is the 7th month. And what are we looking for? 7/17. Here is Passover to resurrection, and the 7th month in the end of days, beginning from Tishri this time, the 7th month, 17th day, is directly following the resurrection. 7/17. If you guys remember a long time ago when I taught on this, I've said it. In fact, I'll show you an image of it. Okay, when we shared this, you notice right here, these two right here relate to the 7th year. Remember, it's 6 years of seals, and the 7th year is the Sabbath year. So he's defeated them, he's destroyed them at the end, at the Feast of Trumpets time. And then what? Well, it's the 144,000 that gets sealed. Then it's the rapture of the church, of the great multitude. And then you have the 7th seal. And the 7th seal is found in chapter 8, and it's called about the space of half an hour. See, about half an hour. I've been saying for over 3 years, or at least 3 years now, that this is a representation of about 6 months. The question to me had always been, is the 7th seal going to be on the 7th month side of about half a year, or is it going to be on the 5-month side of about half a year? Okay, if it was half an hour, well, then we could have said 6 months. But now when we go back and we look at 7/17, and we know that there were 2 of them, and there's still one coming as a plucked, and the Gregorian calendar was 7/17, 7th month, 17th day, and in the end time calendar for the house of Israel, but counted from the end time revelation, which is now from Tishri, and you go to 7/17, it would appear that the first 7 months and change are on this side of the about 6 months, or about half an hour, leaving the 7th seal to be about or just under 5 months. You see how clear that's getting? It was this revelation of another, the second 7/17. And how did we know it? You see, we had this revelation for a long time, because I've been teaching this as well for probably close to 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, that this is meaning they have seen. Only Mark's is a past tense. They didn't go in the rapture when he comes, because at his coming, at the day and hour no one knows, has nothing to do with the rapture. It has to do with his coming. That's why they're part of the group saying they will have seen. When we go to Matthew, look at what Matthew says. Let's go to Matthew's end of 16 is where it starts. Look at what it says in Matthew 16 verse 28. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Well, now wait a second. Mark's is a past tense, and we can relate it now. We can relate it to the next 7/17 on a Hebrew-based calendar counting from Tishri. We had the first one, which is 7/17 for the Gentiles on the Gentile calendar. But what about Matthew's? It's not a past tense, and it says till they see the Son of Man coming with his kingdom, coming in his kingdom. When we go to chapter 17 of Matthew, it then says after 6 days, there he is where now they will see him coming with his kingdom. Not past tense. It means right at that point, they're going to see him coming with his kingdom. And what does his after 6 days mean? The after 6 of trumpets, which means at the end of the 13th year total, or at the end of the 6th year of trumpets, is when they will see. This is why it's after 6 days, and they will see him coming with his kingdom. Do you want to know why? It's Matthew 24. Remember I told you the pre-tribbers, the post-tribbers were the ones that actually had this right? Do you remember? And when I say right, it's because they only understand from Matthew. So the post-tribbers telling the whole world that no, Matthew is telling us in Matthew 24, the day and hour no one knows, is talking about the return of the Lord. They were correct. It's the pre-tribbers that were all messed up because they're in the wrong book. Okay, do you guys remember this word coming? This word coming is only found in, if you guys remember, it's only found in Matthew's discourse. Out of all the gospels, it's only found in Matthew's discourse because it's talking about his coming, his literal coming, feet down on the Mount of Olives. So watch this story. We see where it is. There it is, the Son of Man. Immediately. Well, that's not what Mark said. You see, it said after that tribulation. This one says immediately after the tribulation of those days. The sun shall be dark and the moon shall not give her light. Stars of heaven shall fall. Powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the tribes of man, the Son of Man coming in. You see, in Mark, the in meant in, but in Matthew, it means on, because at the end of those 6 years of trumpets, they will see him coming. You see, they will see him coming with his kingdom. And listen to what it says next. Verse 31, Matthew 24, verse 31. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Do you know that that trumpet is only used in Matthew? What? You got it. Only used in all the Gospels. It's only used in Matthew 24. And look where it's connected to. 1 Corinthians 15:52, at the last trumpet. You following? At the last trumpet. So what does this mean? Watch this. Let's go to this day and hour everybody talks about. See, but of that day and of that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. When is the Lord coming? And it's going to be the time of the days of Noah. We shared this before, right? It's when he comes at the end of 13 years, or at the end of the 6 years of trumpets, but from the beginning of tribulation in trumpets of 2021 to his return, feet down on the Mount of Olives in trumpets of 2034. He's got 1 year cleanup. And what do we know that 1 year is? At his coming, when they see him coming in his kingdom. See, this is what it's saying. In verse 37, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. This is his coming. They're saying, when is your coming? When is your coming? When is your coming? This is his coming. At the day and hour no one knows. It has nothing to do with the rapture. It's post when he comes feet down on the Mount of Olives. And how long is the time? We shared this recently. How long is the time of Noah being in the ark? He was 600 years old when it started, and when it was over, he was what? 601. First year, first month, first day, which is a representation of what? 6,000 when it started, and 6,001 will be when it's over. That will be the Lord having returned at 6,000, fulfilling the final 14th year as it was in the days of Noah. The Lord returning, Feast of Trumpets 2034, fulfilling 1 year as it was in the days of Noah. And when it's all over and the bride and the trumpet blast from the Father takes place, it's going to be what? The Feast of Trumpets 2035, when the Lord will have renewed the earth, the world will know that he's here, and the Jubilee will begin at the Feast of Trumpets. Oh man, come on. Let's go back to Matthew 24. This is so awesome. This is so awesome. This is it, brothers and sisters. We got it. The Lord has revealed it. His Spirit has been working through us, brothers and sisters. This is it. He is coming at the day and hour no one knows. So now, when we go and what do we see? He came at the end right here after 6 at the day and hour no one knows in Mark. And it was the Feast of Trumpets. Then in this year, Sabbath year, he what? He's there with the place prepared, but they don't get to go right away. In there's the battle, right? There was the first sword. So he had to destroy them. That's why Ezekiel says they will then be burning weapons for 7 years. Hello. You see, that's why it's right here. It was the Ezekiel 39 war. It's the Ezekiel 39 war. And it's why they're then burning weapons for 7 years. Hello. Okay. So now the rapture would happen at resurrection time in 2028 for the 7th month, 17th day. Then the 7th seal is that remaining portion of the year of about 5 months. And then at the beginning of trumpets in in the beginning of trumpets 2028 is the beginning of the 7 years of trumpets, and the first 3.5 years where the city and the streets are being rebuilt. Guys, remember that? The Lord is now here. He's on Mount Zion. He had the 38-39 war, or the 39 war. They're going to be burning weapons now for 7 years for fuel. The 144,000 were sealed. The rapture of the church took place. They're now on heavenly Mount Zion with them. There's about 5 months for this, about half an hour of silence for the 7th seal. I believe it relates to the covenant he's now going to make, right? We talked about that. He's going to make that covenant with all nations, with all people, he said in Zechariah chapter 11. He's talking about the one that he made that he's then going to have to break at mid trumpets. Okay, so there he is. The Lord is on Mount Zion. And we shared this before, that the Jews, the Christians keep saying, well, the Jews are going to fall for the Antichrist. No, they're not. At the beginning of trumpets, it's actually going to be the Lord, Messiah, the anointed one on heavenly Mount Zion, who gathered them all back from the nations into the promised land, and they're going to rebuild the third temple. You see, it's the Christians that got it wrong. That's going to be the time of trumpets. The Lord is there on Mount Zion. And for 3.5 years, they're going to be rebuilding the city and the streets. So now if this starts, you see, I have the fall of 2028. So if we go to the fall feasts of 2028, you had the rapture now, and then we go to Feast of Trumpets 2028. The day and hour no one knows is now the beginning of trumpets, the beginning of the trumpet judgments. During this time, the Lord overseeing it and them being gathered back, the rapture is there. They will begin to rebuild the city and the streets and the temple. Even it says in the midst of much trial or tribulation. Why? Because during those 3.5 years, the 4 trumpets are going off. Go look at what the 4 trumpets are all about. A third of the seas, a third of the trees burning, a third of this, a third of that. There's devastation going on around the world. Okay, but Jerusalem and everything, it's going to be surrounded, it's going to be protected, right? The 2 witnesses are going to watch over it. But then what happens? We know that the ox, which is the revelation of the beginning and the end, the ox, Messiah is going to be cut off, as Daniel says, as Zechariah 11 says, right at about the time of what? 3.5 years into trumpets. So guess what? 3.5 years from trumpets 2028, when they start rebuilding the city and the streets, would go to trumpets 29, 30, 31. Okay, so where do we get to? At trumpets of 2031 is 3 years in. But we know Messiah is going to be what? Again, right? This time it's the ox's turn, right? This time it's the bull's turn. So there's 3 years. And what would be the after 6 months, right? Go to 2032. What would be 3.5 years? There you go. March of 2032. March of 2032 will be approximately the time frame of about 3.5 years that we've been talking about, the midpoint of trumpets, and Messiah, we've been saying, would be cut off again. Do you think he's going to be cut off at some random inappropriate day in scripture? Or do you think it's going to be, hello, Passover? Do you understand how perfect the revelation has become? Do we know absolutely everything perfectly? No. But this revelation, the Gospels, the 14 years, the day and hour no one knows, who the Gospels and how they're speaking to in their time frame, when to what time in relation to the Lord and to the people. 3.5 years when Messiah is cut off again. It will be Passover of 2032. This is the time when Satan has been cast out of heaven. And Satan will then take control. And what is he going to do according to Matthew 24? This is the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. Why? Because the temple will have now been built and the city rebuilt. And what's going to happen? Messiah cut off. See, just like it says here, spring of 32, Satan is cast down, Messiah is cut off. He has become the time, remember I said in the beginning and in the last video that Messiah came the first time for the house of Israel. There is still something to come for the house of Judah. It's not all about sacrificing animals when the temple is rebuilt. There has to be a sacrifice, a blood covenant made for Judah. It's the reason in the video we did about Jonah. It's the reason why Christ said what he said in the type and shadow, what Jonah said here. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and made vows. Where is it? Chapter 2 here. Chapter 2 verse 9. This, remember, Jonah is the type and shadow of Christ, and he says, but I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. What was this all about? What is the type and shadow? The type and shadow was about him 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, just as he said in Matthew that he would be what? 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish. And I can't remember, where is this one? All right. 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, and I can't remember. I always mix this one up with Matthew. Give me 1 second. I want you guys to see it. If I can remember where it is. Matthew 22. No, that's the marriage one. Oh, come on. Is it further back in? I think it's further back, maybe in 12. Let's see. Okay, it's one of those things that the churches have argued for a long time. One of those things they believe is a contradiction. Right there it is, 12. They believe that it was a contradiction. Why does Luke talk about the 40 when the Son of Man says he's going to be as Jonah was 40 days and 40 nights? Well, Jonah was a warning. It had nothing to do with Christ's resurrection for 40 days. He wasn't a warning like Jonah was. It was a prophecy for the end. But in Mark, remember, he said they're not going to get any sign. They're not going to give in anything for when their time is. He got in the ship and he left. And then you get to Matthew, and he says he's going to be 3 days and 3 nights as Jonah was in the belly of the fish, of the whale. So shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth. But we know in his death and resurrection, he wasn't 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth, because it didn't equal that. He was a total from when he was taken to the hands of sinful men to the time of his resurrection was only about 2.5 days, a little over a day and a bit, about a day and a half that he would have been in the earth. So it was impossible. This still had to be fulfilled. This is why we're seeing what we're seeing. This being crucified again and happening at Passover. He's going to fulfill the 3 days and 3 nights, but this time for Judah. That's the vow that he's talking about making as Jonah over in the book of Jonah. Guys, the whole thing is connected to the Feast of Trumpets. So here's the Son of Man, okay? Now the bull, the ox, has been crucified, this dying again that we saw, this time for Judah. The beginning of the end and the beginning. And what do we have? Well, we know from Daniel, watch this. We know in Daniel chapter 12, he says, oh man, this is so terrible. How long is this going to last? And he's told that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. So this is 1, 2 plus half. This is 2.5 years. And what's this 2.5 years? This is Satan's time to scatter the people till it shall be finished. When is it finished? Well, 2.5 years from the time that Messiah is cut off. Where's the half? Feast of Trumpets. And then let's add 2 years. 2033, 2034, 2034, Feast of Trumpets is now the end of 2.5 years that we just saw of Satan's reign, where he will have had the power to scatter the holy people till it shall be finished. And why would it finish and equal the Feast of Trumpets of 2034? Because the Lord told us he is coming. At his coming, it will be the day and hour no one knows, and we know that it's after 6 years of trumpets, 3.5, which was the rebuilding of the city and the streets, then being cut off, and Satan being given 2.5 years of the final 3.5 years, to when Messiah would then come, and at the end of that time would be what? In the big picture, it would be the end of the 20th or the end of the 13th, and Satan will be then bound for 1,000 years. So let's go look at chapter 20. And what do we see but Satan bound for 1,000 years? Oh, this is so awesome. I told you, man, this is going to blow your mind when you understand it's all connected to the Feast of Trumpets. The whole thing is about the Feast of Trumpets for the end of days. You see right here, this final 3.5, but the Satan only getting 2.5 years. The Lord returning at the fall of 2034. That means the fall feasts. Okay, for that one more year to destroy. Remember, what does he got to do? He's got to destroy all those that came against. Satan's going to be bound, and it's going to be that battle. What battle could that be, do you think? Do you think it's possible that this battle is what I showed you guys just a little while ago as being what? That funny little story of, oh shoot, where'd it go? Why do I always mix it up? It was sliding through too quick. You guys will know it, right? What am I missing? Okay, when he, come on, man. Where is it? That's got to be 22. Maybe I just flew through it too quick. It's the two swords. All right? It's the story of the two swords. There we go. It is chapter 22. I went through too quick. I thought it was further in the chapter. Okay? It's the story of the two swords. Well, I shared with you that the first story of the first sword was when he comes on Mount Zion at the end of seals. But he said two swords was fine because he's got one more sword when he comes at the end of trumpets, or at the end of the 6 years of trumpets. He's got one more final sword. That's why he said two swords was enough. And we got the proof of this in Zechariah 14, when he comes at the beginning of the 14th year, at the end of the 13th or the beginning of the 14th year, means the same thing. And listen to what it says. Verse 2, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the house rifled, and the women ravished, and half the city shall fall and shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. You see that? Half the city shall go forth into captivity. Think of the foolish and wise virgins. Hello. Anyways, so then what does it say? We're talking about the battles, right? The wars. Listen to verse 3. Zechariah 14, verse 3. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. So he's going to fight again as when he did in the day of battle. Look at this. He's talking about this battle that's about to take place, and it's a battle, but generally a war. And he's talking about one that he already had which was a battle and a war. Why? Because there were two swords. Two swords. One is the Feast of Trumpets, shofar sound as an alarm for destruction at the end of seals when he comes. And the other one is when he comes at the end of trumpets, or the sixth trumpet, when the shofar will be sounded at the Feast of Trumpets for that final battle. You see, when he comes feet down on the Mount of Olives at that final sword, that second sword and second battle, the mountain rips in two. Do you remember what Daniel chapter 12 just said about that time? That when Satan has this power, he's going to have it for 2.5 years until the time what? That all things shall be finished. So it shall be finished when the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives, binds Satan up and destroys all those who came against Jerusalem. That's what Zechariah 14 goes on to talk about, this battle, and the Lord essentially cleaning or renewing everything on the earth. Now watch this. Bring this into the book of Revelation. And let's go to chapter 10. Check this out. Listen to this. Chapter 10, verse 7. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished. What did Daniel 12 just say? That when Satan's 2.5 years are over, the mystery of God should be finished. Why? Because just like Matthew 24 or Matthew 16 into 17 said, that that they will what? They will see him coming in his kingdom. And not just the Jews, but the whole earth. Remember Matthew 28, the end of the story. He's seen as lightning. Remember, he's seen as lightning coming down. And we end up reading that then he's with them until the end of the world, because he's here till it's all over at the end of the millennial reign. It's like Luke 17. The whole world is going to see him because he's going to be as lightning from one end unto the other at the end. You see, he tells them, hey, I'm going to be as lightning from one end to the other in the day of the Son of Man when this happens. But first, his 40 days being rejected. Okay, this Noah one isn't like the last year. It's the 40 days reference. It's talking about his days. The Matthew Noah one is referencing the 14th year that he's here. So when he comes at the end, it's like lightning from one end of heaven unto the other. And when he does, there it is, feet down on the Mount of Olives, the mystery of God will be finished, because the entire world will see him, just as Matthew 24 said. They will see him coming on the clouds. Remember how we just showed you that? The word in Matthew only means on. And when is he going to be seen coming on the clouds? At the great sound of a trumpet, the last trumpet, the final trumpet. Again, this trumpet is the Feast of Trumpets. When you go to the seventh trumpet, you see right here, and the seventh angel sounded. Remember in chapter 10, it said, when the seventh angel, when the sounding is about to take place, boom, it's over. Why? Because the Lord has come, feet down on the Mount of Olives. That great earthquake has now taken place, and the seventh trumpet will have finished sounding, and everything on heaven and in heaven and on earth will now be the Lord's. Brothers and sisters, the whole thing is connected to the Feast of Trumpets. Do you follow that? The whole thing. I'm just looking to see what other little notes I got here for you. It's all connected to the Feast of Trumpets. Over and over and over and over. I'm just checking to see. It's I hope you guys saw that. It means tribulation begins at the Feast of Trumpets. It means at the end of 6 years, the Lord will return on Mount Zion, on heavenly Mount Zion, at the Feast of Trumpets. The rapture of the great multitude will not happen for several months. I believe that is the revelation of the second 717. This time on the Hebrew calendar because it's for Israelites. All right. And then trumpets will be the beginning of the next 7 years during the trumpet judgments. 3.5 years later, in trumpets, Messiah will be cut off. And what happens to the group of people that was there with the Lord? Here she is. The woman flies away into the wilderness, right? On the wings of an eagle. How long is this woman going to fly away into the wilderness for? Watch this. Verse 14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness unto the place where she is nourished for a time plus times plus half. 1 plus 2 plus a half is 3.5 years. So while Satan is going to rule 2.5 out of those final 3.5 years, when Messiah comes and finishes that final year in the final battle and cleanses and renews everything, it's not until that final year is done, that 14th year is over, then those who were in the wilderness, protected for the entirety of the final 3.5 years of trumpets, will be brought back. So what do you have? 6 and 1, 6 and 1. And where is the cutoff time of Messiah? Total of 10 plus about a half, and then 2.5 years of Satan, and final year of the Lord, then everybody returning back. It is the answer. It is the revelation of what we used to talk about so often, of Psalms 90 verse 10. But the days of your years are 70, which means 70. And if by reason of strength, meaning, and if you have the power to survive to 80, which is 10 years, that strength that gets you through there, and that strength that you're going to be enduring with, is going to be labor, which is travail, sorrow, and pain, which means affliction. It means tribulation. It will be 10 years of pain, sorrow, and tribulation. That's 10 years. That's the 7 seals and 3 years of trumpets. But then it says what? For it is soon cut off. That means a short period of time to the cutoff, which is what? About 6 months. This is when Messiah will then be cut off. So you've got 10 years. You've got 6 months, which is exactly what? 7 of seals, 3.5 of trumpets, to what? The time of being cut off. And then what does he tell them? And we fly away. Who is that that's flying away? It's what I just shared with you from Revelation chapter 12:14. It's the 3.5 years flying away that this group will remain till the 14 years are over. Total, it's telling us, is 14 years. Now, some people then they say, but what about 70 years? How is it possible that it's 70 years? Well, we're not going to go into all that. We've done the videos on it. Right? Go read Leviticus chapter 19. When Israel came into the land that the Lord gave them, The Lord told them 3 years they are not to touch from the trees. From all the trees they have planted, they're not to take the fruit or anything thereof. Then it's holy to the Lord. So it was supposed to be 3 years plus the 70. When you take the 3 years plus the 70, this spring of 2021, the 3 plus 70 have been fulfilled. Brothers and sisters, this is this revelation that the Lord gave us. This is the purpose of the magnitude of the mind-blowing wowness of this revelation in its complete story of why the Lord gave it to us. Taurus, right? The ox, the bull, the beginning and the end, from the beginning. What did the Lord reveal to us last March? What was the one confirmation I literally got from the Holy Spirit? Right on target, which meant bullseye. We then came to understand that bullseye, and right on target means bullseye, and you do a search for bullseye and you get the constellation of Taurus. And in the bull's eye in the constellation of Taurus is the 14th brightest star in the entire sky. Because the answer is what? The truth is 14 years. Do you know what the other eye is? This other little eye? There's bull's eye. This is 14. Okay, there it is, the 14th brightest star in the night sky. This bull's eye, well, the other one has an eye too, the other side. This one right here is called ayin. Ayin means eye in Hebrew, and it represents the 70th letter. It represents the number 70. Did you hear that? 14 years at 70. 70 in one eye, 14 for the other eye. And the answer to the story is, at the end of 70, the 14 years begins. I'm telling you, this isn't made up, guys. This is all there in the story. This is the culmination of all the revelation we've been given for almost 4 years. Did you guys see that? Did you guys catch that? Watch this. In 2021, the tribulation will begin at the Feast of Trumpets. That will be the start of the 14 years. This ministry knowingly began and received the beginning of revelation. It's written in the book. It's written on ministryrevealed.com, the story of how it all began. It started on September 8th, 2017. It'll be the 4-year anniversary, exactly 4 years of the ministry having started to the time of the tribulation beginning. Do you want to see something cool? This was shared by a brother, Michael Kennedy, I believe it. Yeah, Michael Kennedy. Watch this. He calculated, and if you calculate September 8th, 2017 to July 17th of 2021, the escape of the Gentile bride, look at what it means. A race that is course, a career. It's about John, it's about some others, and it's the 3 scriptures that talk about, I have run my race, I have completed my course. The time is done. Now it's time to go forward. It's wild stuff, guys. I didn't find that. That was what Michael Kennedy found. You see, we have understood this from just about the beginning. This is about 3.5 years since we've understood Psalms 90 and 10. Could you imagine that? All this time? This is why we're so passionate about trying to wake people up. When you realize that they're telling us it means Feast of Trumpets, Yet so many believe that the rapture could have been, in any month, but everybody knows that this reference means Feast of Trumpets. But it's even more wild because this is not even a reference to the rapture, it's a reference to his return. So, did you see that awesomeness with this too, with Matthew? It said immediately after. Immediately after. Immediately after the sixth trumpet. Immediately after the sixth trumpet, which is the end of the sixth year. Watch this. This is why you see at the end of the sixth trumpet, in the same hour, there was a great earthquake, and a tenth part of the city fell, and it said, and the remnant were frightened and gave glory to the God of heaven. Why would they give glory to the God of heaven? Because there was another earthquake. Because it was the great earthquake of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Do you get it? The day and hour of Mark and Matthew was always about the return of the Lord 6 years after the beginning of tribulation for seals, and then 6 years from the beginning of trumpets. Every single one is the Feast of Trumpets. And the reason Luke didn't have it, because the Son of Man will begin his 40 days before the Feast of Trumpets. And when he comes for these 40 days, he's not coming to war. He's not coming to battle and destroy. He's not coming with one of the two swords. He's coming to save. I love you guys. God bless you. God bless your families. I pray you ponder this. I pray you pray about it. Ask the Lord to reveal and give you greater clarity if you're still questioning the understanding. Go watch those intro videos and be ready, brothers and sisters. Be ready. Because as I speak to you right now, we're right here. The escape of the bride of Christ is right here. The beginning of the 50 days to the Holy Ghost are from there to here. The 40 days of the Son of Man will begin about right here, and will take them to somewhere about here. The Antichrist spirit, the raven, will be released around here, and the Holy Ghost about here, somewhere in here. And the following day will be the second attack, this time on Jerusalem, delivered into the hands of Assad and those that are with him, the lion from the king of the north, who will scatter them from Jerusalem, and the 14 years of tribulation will begin. I'm so looking forward to meeting you guys. I'm so looking forward to meeting your families. This is so awesome. It's just so awesome. Watch some of these videos, discern and understand what's been said. Come and watch and understand for yourself that it's 7:17, not because we say so, but that was what the revelation led us to. I love you guys. God bless you. Bye for now.